Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Welcome everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Zubayra Shamseden. I am from Uyghur Human Rights Welcome Project. Everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Zubayra Shamseden. I am from Uyghur Human Rights. I, along with my colleague and a partner at Uyghur American Association, Elfidar Iltebir, would like to welcome you to today's panel webinar on behalf of the Uyghur Wellness Initiative. We will be waiting just a few minutes to give everyone time to log in before we begin.
Hello again. I believe it's 12:02. We could start again. Welcome everyone. My name is Elfidar Iltebir and I'm from Uyghur American Association. I, along with my colleague Zubayra here, Zubayra Shamseden at UHRP, we would like to welcome you to join us today for our newest event with the Uyghur Wellness Initiative.
As you know, the Uyghur Wellness Initiative is a collaborative community of partners working together to advance the cause of holistic well-being for individuals and the families of the Uyghur diaspora community. Today, we are coming together in solidarity for our most important task, which is to extend justice and compassion into the world on behalf of our people and all those who work together with us.
We're pleased to introduce you today to Amela Puljek-Shank. Not only is Amela a collaborator and a colleague who is the director at the Peace Academy in Bosnia, and also one of the counselor who you may meet if you come to receive support at the Uyghur Wellness Initiative. Amela Puljek-Shank has an MSc in conflict transformation and she's a certified Gestalt psychotherapist, bringing almost 3 decades of peace-building work as teacher, facilitator, trainer, and psychotherapist. She specializes in trauma, healing, and recovery on an individual and group level, as well as the areas of worker care, compassion, fatigue, and burnout. As a war survivor who has experienced being an internally displaced person, she has experienced the destruction that results from violent conflict. She has also experienced the incredible resilience and strength that human beings possess to overcome destruction and rebuild life anew. We hope that by having her share with us today, she can share with us from both her knowledge and her experiences, and also give you a taste for the professional expertise and compassionate care that you may experience when you come to the Uyghur Wellness Initiative.
Before we begin, We would like to make a note to our listeners that today's topic is quite heavy. We are going to work on understanding the things that have happened to us and working on growing our ability to have names for those things. If at any point during this presentation you are beginning to experience psychological or emotional distress, please feel free to step out of the presentation or reach out privately to our moderators online through the chat. Please know that Uyghur Wellness Initiative has a team of counselors who are available to meet with anyone who has need. And all you have to do is reach out to the email address that I can mention right now. It's uygurwellness@gmail.com to be put in touch with someone who can walk with you in any big feelings that this conversation may bring up for you. In summary, we care for you, we are here for you, and we are here on the journey that lies ahead. With this, Amela, we welcome you and we would like to invite you to share your presentation. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Zubayra and Elfidar, very much for a warm welcome. I really feel honored to be invited into this space. We can bring the presentation now. We can start the first slide, yes. I understand that I am coming from an outside perspective and want to really name and recognize that. I welcome our moderators to stop me at any moment to ask clarifying questions, or if there are questions from the audience that's listening to us, please feel free to send them while I'm presenting. We will go through the slides, and I understand it's kind of a, we are not in the physical space, so we are in this internet space. And I want to make sure that we are supported and safe and cared for during the presentation. So we'll be very careful in conversation. We'll speak slower than usually I am because English is my second language. So probably for many of you as well, second language, even though we all speak quite good English. So just to make sure that it's easier to understand for all of us here. I am also recognizing as an outsider that I do have somewhat an understanding of your context, but also there's a lot that I don't understand, and you can absolutely educate me, share with me at any point, the moderators or you yourselves. I approach this space with a lot of respect for your experiences, your lives, and what you have gone through and are going through. So the topic of our webinar today is understanding and naming our hurts. And we already got through introductions. We'll be together for maybe an hour and a half. If any of you would like to get up and not be glued to the screen, please do that. Feel free to do that. You don't have to sit through all the presentation. I know that everybody knows this, but it's always good for a facilitator to mention that. What is the really appropriate term when we talk about harms? The word that is sometimes very triggering for all of us is the word trauma or traumas, because it comes with a lot of baggage, with a lot of difficult meaning associated with this word. And the word in itself is very much stigmatized because it brings certain understanding that those of us who have gone through the trauma or traumas, or who are still going through them and are experiencing them, are not normal. That's one of the biggest fears that survivors are experiencing, and that was my own personal experience. When I started to experience the symptoms of trauma, I really thought I was going crazy. And it took a lot of education on my part to understand that my responses and my symptoms were absolutely appropriate given the life experience that I had and that I was going through. But word trauma comes from the Greek word, which actually means a wound. So every time when we talk about trauma or traumas, we actually talk about wounds or harms. And those are terms that are easier for us to hear. And I would invite you to expand your vocabulary. So when we talk about trauma or traumas, we actually talk about wounds or harms. Along the same line, the word resilience comes along with the trauma. We are not aware of it, maybe clearly at the beginning, but as we are going through the hard experiences ourselves, we are also surviving them, living through them, and we are actually being resilient on the ongoing basis. And sometimes we get tired of this resilience because it is tiring to be going through the traumatic experiences. For some of us, it ends. For some of us, it's an ongoing. What was helpful for me to understand is that there was an inner drive in me, which I believe each one of us shares, which is that pushes me to live, pushes me to hope, pushes me to create sense of safety and security for myself in the midst of the wounds that I was experiencing. And that is actually the resilience is going alongside of this traumatic experience. So when we talk about the harms that are being done to us, that we are surviving, we also should be thinking, and I'm very conscientious of saying the word should, we're also should be thinking about how resilient we are, how actively we are actually surviving and living our life, regardless of the fact that we are in the midst of the traumatic experience. Trauma basically happens when our ability to respond to threat is overwhelmed. Long while ago, maybe before 20 or something years ago, there was a definition that was stated something like trauma is normal response to abnormal situation. I remember that definition because I used it in teaching myself. And then a lot of conversation has been done in scientific community where we actually, which is absolutely normal that we came to this conclusion, most of the world actually lives in insecure situations. So the trauma for many of us, or traumatic experience or traumatic events, it's not abnormal. It's actually an everyday occurrence. So it's not a normal response to abnormal situation. It's actually a normal response to a situation that you're finding yourself in, that we are finding ourselves in. I very much appreciate the Peter Levine author who said that trauma is actually a fact of life, but it doesn't have to be a life sentence. Sometimes our reactions to trauma are dormant because they have to be dormant because our survival instincts kick in. Our survival instinct is that when we are hurt, we might experience shock. We might be frozen. We might be crying. We might be screaming. We might be sweating. We might be shaking. Then that stops, and we move into that state of calmness, or maybe distance. And this is that delayed. When we move away from the experience because we might be physically present in, but we move emotionally, physically, also mentally and spiritually away from the experience so that we can actually survive it. And this is a natural reaction because our body, and we will see later on, our brain, our soul, and our hearts are actually protecting us to survive the experience. And it's absolutely acceptable and normal that sometimes symptoms and reactions may lay dormant for years, may show up maybe a month or two after the traumatic event happened, or events might show up after a couple of years, might be dormant for about 20 years, and then they might surface because the certain event or certain life circumstances or the moment where we are in life at a particular time might bring up the past experiences. So it's just to normalize the reaction, just to normalize the fact that there is delayed reaction, and that is okay. That doesn't mean that we are not normal or that we have gone crazy. No, we actually packed the traumatic event that we survived in acceptable way in our hearts, souls, and mind, and continue to live our life, continue to survive, and actually continue perhaps to even find a joy and hope in life. And maybe at some point later, after 10 years or 5 years or 6 months, some might trigger and certain reactions might show up. And if they do show up, my approach and the way in which I have been teaching and practicing for myself personally and the people that I'm working with, individually in the groups, is to actually understand the symptoms, turn towards them, recognize them, accept them because they have shown up for the reason. There is a level of compassion towards oneself that one learns when is working in the process of trauma healing. There's these 3 E's in trauma, which is events, experience, and effects. And events is actually circumstances that cause the trauma, and it's basically environment that we are living in, which sometimes we may not have a control over. And we all know that on this webinar, how that affected all of us. Experience is really each one of us may experience the same traumatic event differently. So each of us will have different reactions. We might find some commonalities, but also each one of us will have reactions that are just specific to me or to Zubayra or to Elfidar. And that is absolutely okay. Because it's each of us is individual, depending on our personality, on our support system, on our biological makeup. So it's absolutely, I hate to say the word normal, but it's normal.
Can I just interrupt one second, Amela? So the trauma won't go away, is that what you're saying, in your lifetime?
Its trauma is transformed. There is a slide in which we talk about post-traumatic growth. And that is, for myself, it took many years of journey of healing, trauma healing. It took about 4 years of individual therapy, ongoing support, where I finally felt I have come to the place where I'm thinking, my spirit is actually lighter. I love life more. I hope more. And I can actually continue. I can go back and work with people who have gone through the trauma and be supportive to them and not be traumatized by that. So it's transformed. There is I think an expectation and a notion that we start the healing process and we end the healing process. Okay, we can look at it like that, but because we are living human beings, we are actually transforming the traumatic experience. We are healing in the process, and at different stages of our lives, it's really different. It doesn't bother us. It doesn't bother us anymore. It's not heavy anymore. The certain triggers are not triggering us anymore. We are feeling fine. But there might be some episodes that are still might be difficult. And what I'm trying to say here, for example, because of the wars in Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, our context is not 100% peaceful, so to speak. It is peaceful, but also I would say it's an absence of war. There's a constant tension. So we do have mentions at every election that we might have, again, conflict. And when that happens, I can feel that I all mobilize myself to prepare for possibility. What if happens again? And then my memories of what I have survived, sure, they come up. But then I recognize, wait a minute, I'm fine, I'm safe. There's no war happening currently. There's no indication that anything will start. And I come back to myself, to my safety, and I can continue living there quite regularly. So the experience comes up, the memories come up, but they also go back, and I am at the state of peace. Is that, Zubayra, is that a helpful explanation?
Very helpful, very helpful. Thank you, Amela. Please keep going.
Trauma is present. So if somebody comes and tells, oh, you or me, why don't you get over it? Come on, you should be able to move on. Look at me, or I have not experienced that. Fine. I say to people that I totally hear you. That's your opinion. But a lot of people on this planet are actually having experienced that, but I have experienced it lesser or more degree. So there is a respect on some deep human level understanding that people have gone through the suffering. Trauma is unique to each individual, and we are recovering with time. It is a process. It really takes time. It is a process. And it's very helpful not to focus on end date. It will last, my recovery will last for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. It depends on intensity. Sometimes we may need therapy. Sometimes we may not need therapy because we have very good support skills internally and externally that can help us to go through the traumatic event. Sometimes we may need medication, short or long term, to actually bring the symptoms to the normal level so that we can actually continue to live life in a very supportive and healthy way. And also people are able to stop taking medication and continue to live their lives without medication. There's all sorts of possibilities in the process of recovery. I brought this slide because there's different types of stress, and trauma is actually what we call is traumatic stress. And we have this positive stress and we have a distress. For example, me preparing for this event, preparing a PowerPoint and preparing myself was a kind of level of a positive stress and also distress. It's a new environment. I don't see people. I cannot interact with the people directly. So it was level of anxiety that I was living with. But there's also everyday life events. We are experiencing acute stress, which we are experiencing just by living everyday life. There is sometimes episodic acute stress that, for example, I'm type A, like things to be perfect, like things to done on time, have a list of things that I want to finish. So absolutely, this is where I can identify myself. Chronic stress, many of us experience. For example, we sometimes forget that caring for the loved ones who are sick and ill, who are terminally ill, is type of chronic stress that really, it's difficult for people to go through, but people do go through. And of course, there's this level of traumatic stress, and there is this. I'm trying, the camera is here. It's like a wave of stress that we may experience, and not everything that we go through the life will end up being traumatic stress. That's very important to know.
Can I just interrupt 1 sec? So
yes.
You said a few stress types. So would you be able to kind of share your personal experience in facing that kind of stress, if possible? But if not, that's fine too.
Sure. If I wake up every day, which we do, and sometimes, for example, in the morning, sometimes I feel heavy. I really don't know why. And then it takes me a while to have an internal conversation with myself to understand, it's from yesterday or from 2 days before. I just gone through the exams for my certification as Gestalt therapist. And that was a level of acute stress, which actually kind of flew into the episodic acute stress from time to time because things needed to be finished on time. There was a deadline. The chronic stress, severe chronic stress I experienced as I cared for my parents. Both of them were terminally ill at different stages of their lives. Sister and I cared for them from the moment when they got ill until they died. That was a very difficult time for us. And I exactly knew that I was in the midst of the chronic stress, which was really difficult. It did not turn into traumatic stress because I surrounded myself with a lot of support. It is hard to know that loved one, when he or she has a cancer that's incurable, that the end of the road is actually death. And preparing for that was really difficult for Sister and I to do. So Zubayra, I hope this distinction between helps. And of course, traumatic stress was more experienced in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you. Very, very useful. Only just for myself, actually, for the audience as well. If they have such a situation or experience with that sort of stresses, just the thinking that they identify
Mm-hmm.
help or get support or treatment if possible. So that's why I just want to make sure it's everything.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It was very helpful. Yep, please go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I will just add on that. The car accidents, major or doesn't matter, surgeries that are stressful for people. Loss of friendships sometimes can be very difficult, and those are all levels of stress that we experience. And sometimes we forget because somehow we learn along the life that we can handle it on our own, which is absolutely great, and we can. But we forget how to seek for support, how to ask for support, and that's the hardest thing for us to venture into that, to risk and ask. I'm sorry, I'm experiencing stress, explaining what's happening. I need this kind of support. That is very difficult. How would you call it? An exercise to do. Traumatic stress or trauma stress response refers to really a normal and this is very important to hear in definition, neurobiological, emotional, psychological, and spiritual response to adverse experiences or circumstances. Along the line there is a resilience response. We are surviving, even though it's hard, we are still continuing to live a life. And resilience response is a normal neurobiological, emotional, psychological, and spiritual response to adverse experience or circumstances. The traumatic event affects the whole person, and we will address that in one of the slides. Sometimes we don't have enough information or forget and expect that people are just stuck emotionally and that they should get over it. But it's actually not easy to get over it because our brain is also affected by traumatic event or events. And our biology of our brain, chemistry, and electrical charges change. So, and that of course affects the whole body and then affects us emotionally and then affects us spiritually. So when we are the ones going through it or supporting the dear ones who are going through the traumatic stress, to be mindful of compassion and patience that we should give to ourselves and to each other. The type of traumatic stress, acute, chronic, complex, and multiple and cumulative, and each of these can be defined by definitions. And I would say that we do not burden ourselves with the definition. What we should pay attention to is that actually I or we have gone through a very hurtful and painful experience or experiences, and that they're affecting our daily life and living and our ability to enjoy and be proactive in our living our life. And if that is happening to us, then we should take a pause and ask ourselves what is happening, and also seek consultation or support from others to help us to understand what we are going through, so that we are not alone in the process. There are 4 B's in basically acknowledging our humanity. Our body experiences trauma on somatic level. Our brain really experiences certain changes on chemical, electrical, and neurobiological level. And when we talk that our brain actually shuts down, it doesn't shut down, it continues to work, but it's at the lower speed, so to speak, and I'll explain that a little bit later. It affects our behavior, where we might become more angry or more withdrawn as a consequence of that. We might become more violent or extremely quiet. Some people might exhibit very risky behaviors and actions. And beliefs, it really hits us at the core of our humanity. It hits us in our soul and disrupts the beliefs that we have. And basically, and the basic belief that we have is that other human beings are not going to hurt us. We are born into this world, I really deeply believe this, with the notion somewhere, even as a newly born child, we kind of trust that when we are brought into this world, that those who we have been born to will love and care for us. and the community that we are part of will do the same. So when the traumatic event happens, we actually have broken the promise to each other. And that hits at the core of our soul, at the core of our heart. What determines the intensity of trauma? Basically, how intense, how long, and how often. The age, and I will explain a little bit later what that means. Our physical and emotional characteristics of us as individuals, as human beings, as a person. Our until now developed capacity to meet and handle and survive and live with danger, and our individual sense of safety. Context of our individual life at the time of the event, the quality of the relationships that we have in our lives or had in our lives, the level to which we have met the adverse circumstances before. Is it in our nature to fight, or is it in our nature to succumb? And either one is absolutely appropriate response. It's not a question of an inappropriate, appropriate. It's how we respond. And there is unbreakable violation of trust associated with traumatic event. And point of impact, we know this. It happens to me. But because we are not isolated human beings, we live in relationships with others, our wives, our husbands, our children, our parents, grandparents, uncles, neighbors, community. It goes from me to my immediate family, then to my wider family, then to my community and wider. So there's a first point of impact, which is I, myself, then the first circle, which is my husband and my son, then the second circle. Well, in this first circle, then I would involve, because it's Bosnian culture, my sister, my uncles and aunts, my cousins, my parents, if they would be living, and so forth. That the second circle would be my colleagues, my friends, my close neighbors, the third circle, and so forth. So there's this naive belief that somehow what happens to me or what happens to you is not impacting people around me. It's just not true. Trauma is impacting all of us in some level. Types of trauma, this primary trauma, the trauma that I have experienced, that happened to me personally. Secondary trauma, or for other definition, is vicarious. When we are supporting, working with, walking with people who are going through traumatic events, we are either understanding their trauma through listening to them, or by watching, for example, traumatic event, when we watch certain news and so forth. The childhood trauma I put in the red because it is the specific experience. When trauma happens when we are adults, we are already formed individuals. We already and hopefully have had healthy and supportive environments. So we have had enough time to develop good coping strategies, good resilience to help us deal with the traumatic event. When traumatic event happens to child or events, that is the most vulnerable that we can experience trauma. Either when an infant or the small children, even the teenagers, because we are still forming. We are still creating the secure attachments with our parents, with our grandparents, with our uncles and aunts, with our community members. And if those attachments are disrupted, then the child learns directly and indirectly, consciously and unconsciously, that this world is not safe for me, and that I need to protect myself. And then we as children develop certain coping strategies which are helpful for us to survive. And these coping strategies define us into adulthood, but also set us in a certain way negatively in relation to the world, impact our physical health and well-being, impact the way in which we create relationships with those who love us or loved ones. But there is a level of distrust towards the world. I also put this here, participatory or perpetrator-induced traumatic stress. Basically, it happens to those who are being an active participant in causing trauma to others. They might ignore it, they might shut it down, but certainly they do have traumatic symptoms. And for some of them, it haunts them until the rest of their lives. Collective trauma is basically man-made and nature-made, and it impacts the feelings of safety of a group or groups of people. And I think in this webinar, we have all gone through that. We all have experienced that. And it basically is, it changes the stories, culture, and psyche of the group that we are part of. It ends up being cumulative and multi-generational. And it really, in many ways, it has unseen impact on collective level for the group. The reactions to traumas, to traumatic event that we have, which are natural, again, I want to stress, because that's our way in which we are trying to protect ourselves and to survive. We act inward, meaning acting in, or outward, acting out. And inward is when we turn unhealed pain on energy in ourselves, and outward is when we turn unhealed pain energy onto others. And inward, we all know how this looks like. Might be more of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, risky behaviors, being angry, being violent towards oneself, being very tired. Depression is one of the common symptoms of turning that inward. Anxiety as well. Outward, I think looking at the world stage today, it's very clear how we are doing that. Repetition of the wars, repetition of the conflicts, assaults on others, and so forth. And the word healing kind of creates the sense that there's the beginning and end, but it's actually healing means transforming. Healing means, how do I, in the process of healing, integrate the traumatic event that I have survived into my experience of my life, and actually continue to live my life with finding the hope and meaning. And as I said, it's a process. Symptoms, there's some of them are listed here: emotional, cognitive, behavioral, physical, and spiritual. Again, holistic approach. And they are both helpful and unhelpful. The first thing that really scares all of us who have gone through traumatic events is the symptoms. The symptoms for us are first sign that something is wrong, that I'm not feeling well. And then we get this feeling like, oh my God, something is wrong with me, I'm not normal. For me, depression was huge, and anxiety. Those two were really merged together, and they're just kind of flipping back and forth. And for me, created a very insecure and unsafe sense of being with myself and living my life in very insecure way. It affected my sleep. I had nightmares. I really had memory problems. Was very irritable, very agitated, really sense of kind of losing sense of control and sense of hope. One of my ways in which I dealt with that people could actually notice, was actually withdrawal. I really withdrew from people because I couldn't. It was too much for me. I couldn't handle it. Physical, we have experienced all of this. For many of us, it's this lump in the throat, pain in the chest, tension in the hands, extreme backaches, heavy legs, hard breathing, and so forth. And spiritual, it hits at the core of who we are. Asking questions. Why did this happen to me? What did I do so bad that I am punished by God to go through this experience? It's a really crisis of faith for many of us. It might be anger towards God. It might be doubt, loss of direction. There's no meaning, and so forth. And when we are experiencing this, the symptoms are helpful because they are alarm bells that we are not balanced. We are not at that stage in our life or in the moment in our life where we feel supported by ourselves to actually live our life. And this is the moment, if we can, it's a certain act of risk, accepting ourselves to know that we are actually not perfect, that we are hurting, and that we need the support and help. And this is the moment, if we can, summon the courage to not carry it on our own, but actually seek the people that we can talk to. It doesn't have to be a counselor. It can be a good family member. It can be a pastor or a priest or a mom, whoever you are close with in the relationships that you feel you could actually bring this with. And it's easier because together you will find some way how to further address it and work with it. The brain is a magnificent instrument created, and it's really, I'm just fascinated by it, especially with the research in the last while. But just to give a brief overview, our brain developed over time. The brownish kind of thing here where my cursor is called the hindbrain, and it developed first. The reddish one is called the midbrain, developed second, and the blue one is forebrain, developed the latest. The brain as an organ, all the areas of the brain kind of work simultaneously at the same time. And with the normal life circumstances and normal stress, our brain handles and manages and functions. But when there is more of a stress than we can handle, when it kind of goes over our ability until now to cope with it, then what happens is that different areas of brain slow down and some areas of brain take over in comparison to other areas of brain. So for example, when the traumatic event happened to me, and I was very thankful for this research and knowledge, the hindbrain really got in the gear, and it's a first alarm system, and it's very concerned about am I physically safe? So if we are in the middle of traumatic event or afterwards, when we are remembering the sense of shock, maybe being frozen, maybe going fighting, or maybe fleeing, that's the hindbrain reaction. That was thinking, calculating very fast, what is the best way for me to react right now so that can actually produce the optimal survival for me. The second alarm system is this red one. It's called midbrain, and there are two areas, amygdala and hippocampus, that are concerned about processing our memories and processing our emotions. And when the stress is so acute, the intensity of experience overwhelms these two, and they shut down, quote unquote. Basically, they slow down their production. And that's why people in the middle of traumatic event or after traumatic event cannot remember sometimes what happened, even though they were in the traumatic event. Some survivors cannot speak because there is speechlessness, loss of speech, because of the terror that they have gone through in surviving the traumatic event. And the blue area here, which is very much concerned about everyday kind of rational brain, under the traumatic stress, slows down. We say it shuts down, continues to work, it continues to function, but our critical thinking, it kind of becomes maybe slower. I brought this slide because it of course we can talk more about this, but what was helpful for me when I was studying and researching on myself, I really took it to heart that there's biological changes in my brain due to traumatic stress. That again can be changed because brain has this wonderful plasticity. Some of us recover after stroke. People learn again to use a hand, to use the leg, again start to speak, again start to walk. That's how our brain also recovers from trauma. We believed a long time ago that we got a certain number of neurons and that all brain cells, that they die as we use them. But we learn now that actually brain is recreating them, and that therapy, physical exercise, meditation, prayer are all aiding in healing trauma or traumatic stress by actually creating a new connections between the brain cells in the brain. And this for me is amazing because our body has ability to heal itself and we can actually support that. In normal life, in the first picture, this is how life is. We are kind of like going on this excited, low. That's a normal functioning. With the traumatic experiences of the second picture, there's the normal function is completely disrupted. And that's very helpful to understand. Because sometimes we expect in the middle of the traumatic event that we behave normally. We're expecting too much of ourselves. And that's just not humanly possible. Our trauma responses are natural responses that we experience when the trauma hits first. Some of us fight. Some of us mobilize so much aggression that they will fight, no matter who it is, no matter what it is. Some of us completely freeze. We cannot move. It just stay in the place. Some of us lose sense of all energy and just flop totally. Some of us run away, and some of us develop such a good way of pleasing others so that we avoid being punished, that avoid future traumatic events. And basically trauma responses, we talk about dysregulation within our whole body. So when people say, well, am I normal or am I not normal? Did I go crazy or not go crazy? That's not helpful vocabulary. I think the new vocabulary that we should kind of usher is, am I regulated in my body? Is my brain regulated? Is my chemistry, electrical charges, are my organs regulated because of the stress that I have experienced? How am I emotionally managing and spiritually? It's also natural that we experience constriction. We are kind of withdrawing in to protect ourselves. And we are also experiencing dissociation. We are pushing away that traumatic event experience away from ourselves so that we can survive. All natural, all thankfully and helpfully, very good responses for survival. So when we do go in trauma healing process, we are actually teaching ourselves how to regulate ourselves in a new way. I often share the video of the wild animals somewhere being chased by a lion, antelope, for example, antelope, and when it's caught by the lion but it's not killed by the lion let it go for whatever reason. What wild animals do immediately after the traumatic event that happened to the antelope, they shake. So if our first response is screaming, crying, hitting, or shaking, that's natural, and it's bringing back that regulation. Sometimes because of our social constructs, we are not doing this because we feel uncomfortable. People will look at us and think that we are strange or that we are not normal. So when we are in the privacy of our homes, if this is what we have urge to do, do it. That helps regulate and actually discharge the shock of traumatic event and the stress that you have experienced. Of course, therapy, exercise, mindfulness, and actually prayer for many of us. And I already talked about neuroplasticity. We have ability to change, to make ourselves better, and finding the way in which our body can do that and that we can assist it is really a key. And there's, of course, our resilience that we have in ourselves and have gotten from our parents from the moment we were born. And our resilience comes also not only from our parents, but comes also from our grandparents, great-grandparents. So we are talking about transgenerational, intergenerational resilience. And there is this famous post-traumatic growth, which for many people is how can trauma or traumatic event and trauma healing become actually growing experience. It changes us forever. For me personally, it really showed me how life is so precious that I don't want to spend time or use my time unwisely. I have a more profound experience in my faith, in my relationship with God. It really set me on a course to work in this field, to be in a healing profession, and that's where my passion and that's where my heart is. And we always have a drive to feel safe, to feel better, and we develop new sense of normal and what is normal. And I just wanted to have this slide of resilience. It's not only up to me. Of course, it is up to me, but there's also socio-ecological definition of resilience. And it's the capacity of the individual or group and their environments to interact in ways that optimize survival. Yes, it is me, but also environment that I am part of. And how is this environment supporting me or not supporting me in my process of recovery? And what's important is that I talked about childhood traumatic experiences and childhood trauma. The research has shown that actually everyday magic, meaning active nurturing, being loved by close ones, in many ways, it helps actually in healing process, in our recovery of trauma. Even if our nature didn't help us, meaning from the moment we were born. And there's this post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth. Those are positive psychological changes experienced as a result of struggling with highly challenging, highly stressful life circumstances. And I think for many of us here on this call, you probably are experiencing this. And I very much rejoice with you if you are. The journey is, we are trauma victims, let's say, call it like that. Then we become survivors. Then we become thrivers and providers. And we bear compassionate witness to ourselves and others. And we are compassionate observers for those who sometimes cannot speak it but need our support. And in the end, there is this wonderful phrase, trauma wise. And I think this is the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Amela, for your sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. We truly appreciate your time as well. Thinking of our situation for Uyghurs, as you know, the genocide is ongoing. So this trauma hasn't ended yet. It's continuing, and we don't know when it will end. So we're like constantly dealing with this. I think it's the highest level trauma because of what's going on. You know, imagine you have loved ones, family members there, and then you're hearing, you know, sterilization, you're hearing rape, sexual abuse, you're hearing starvation in there, and no one is being treated for their disease, organ harvesting, the family separation, so many things are going on, and it's really hard to hold yourself. And from my personal experience, I shared this before in our previous sessions, I constantly hearing negative news, reading negative news, and also talking to the camp survivors. I went on, you know, panic attack multiple times. And the first time when I had it, I thought I was gonna die. Because I had shortness of breath, and I was like, never had enough oxygen, and it keeps breathing faster and faster, and I thought I was gonna die. And when I went to emergency 911, they told me, you're not gonna die. You will faint, and then your body will readjust itself, and then you will start to breathe again. And then that gave me the sense of secureness of like, oh, I won't die. It's not the end of the world, you know. And then I didn't take the medication. They gave me the medication when I was at the emergency, and I told myself I'm going to treat myself. I guess with your experience, I started to regulate myself. You know, when it gets a little harder, I drop everything. I take a walk. I listen to my favorite songs. I spend time with kids. And every night before going to bed, I spend a couple minutes in my kids' bed, hugging them, kissing them, and that kind of therapy for me. And I feel like I could have gone to therapists, but I don't have time for it. And then I don't want to take others' right to go see a therapist, because so many of us are out there need help, honestly. But we're trying to help each other. And also being with the community is another way of therapy for ourselves, I guess.
Sure.
Seeing Zubayra there, seeing my friend at the community events, and I'm not alone. She's going through the same thing. He's going through the same thing, and we need to help each other. So, like, that kind of gives us another way of therapy. So, anyway, I shared too much. My question is, how do you balance when trauma doesn't end and continue like this? And are there some traumas that is heavier than others? And how do we balance it?
You answered your question. I mean, you just gave perfect answer.
That's my way, but maybe others can't take it. I know some are so mad, so upset with the situation, and they don't even want to dance, for example, right? They don't even want to listen to music, or they feel hurt when someone is laughing. So, like, what can we do for those people,
Yeah, I add to what Elfidar is trying to get at, because we kind of talk from the perspective of community and the different community and different reaction to the traumas. I mean, Elfidar perfectly described how we deal with it. But there are definitely some people, especially the last one she mentioned, like, the other people's, other community members being negative to different types of resolving the trauma. Some people, they love to listen to music, dance, and they do some kind of socializing with that, and they can reduce the trauma. But at the same time, we do get negative reaction to those things, and saying that, oh, you know what? The people are dying over there. Genocide is happening. How could you be able to laugh and to dance given such a horrific situation? So what would you say to those people, how they can balance, how they can understand the ones that, try to treat themselves in that way? So I think that would be kind of question that really our community needs to listen, I guess.
Of course, each response is individual, but what we are talking about here is because of when I went at that slide, how do we become traumatized? It's really specific to each one of us, and I cannot take you, Zubayra, out of your difficult experience and staying there if you don't want to. So there is a moment in which survivors sometimes are also afraid to get out of that experience, because then they are thinking, there's possibly belief, I am betraying the loved ones who are suffering in the motherland. If I am listening to music and enjoying my life, if I go shopping, if I go for a walk, but my loved one somewhere there cannot, I am betraying, I am not loyal in this way. And also the hurt might be so profound for that person that it cannot really experience any level of normalcy or any level of joy. In these situations, the level of compassion for you or for me, for you in your community, it's a requiring of us to go beyond our usual capacity to understand and extend that compassion that I think is not even humanly possible, but actually that's when the God enters in for me. Because I do have people who I support and work with who are so bitter that standing with them in that bitterness, in that difficulty, in that pain is so hard, but I stand there. And it's exhausting for me. And I might say, but try this, but could we go there? No, they're not moving because they're not ready. And my only function is standing here with them and support them. But recognizing that for me as a supporter, this will be so exhausting because it's impacting me, my ability to manage the trauma, my ability to find the hope and new meaning in life. So it's okay from time to time to say, I will come back. I need to recharge. I need to take care of myself. And then I'll come back again to support you. This is the shortest answer that I can give you. It's not an easy answer. But what Elfidar said, the traumatic experience is happening. It did not stop. The news that you're receiving about the loved ones, or lack of news about the loved ones, and you're living in different country, you're not in your own homeland. So what you're left with, and it's a really sense of control, what you or I are left with, it's my day to day, and how am I living my day to day? And starting from the very basics, did I eat? Did I sleep? Am I safe in my day to day? Yes, I am. This is how much I am safe. I am able to do this and this and this. That is having and keeping the ground of daily life. And that's what provides a normalcy and routine and keeps one grounded to actually be able to live the life. Then when you add to that, listening to music, going for a walk, enjoying the hugs of your children and being with your loved ones, feeling that connection, it just adds to that feeling healthy, feeling okay, to be able to go through the day on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. I mean, I just wish to add one thing, maybe, for, especially for our people to see singing, dancing is something, I mean, it's not the way of treating our trauma in, other
Sure.
countries. Because what maybe the China's propaganda also contributes into it as well, because Chinese government all the time use Uyghur dance and the singing for every type of propaganda, like staging tours. Right now, the Chinese authority is kind of coordinating foreign tourists to go to East Turkestan and visit. First appearance they see is the singing, dancing Uyghurs. All nice dresses. So it's just, that Potemkin village. They are happy, happy face. I think maybe that also contributes in other people to be negative about our culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, negative about, using that, which is actually, it's our cultural treasure that we could use. And because we are the Uyghurs, that's part of our identity. But unfortunately, that's what happened. It's very unfortunate. So just wish to add that too as well.
I see that there was also a question here to share more about bitterness and how I worked through that in my life. I honestly don't think it was bitterness because the traumatic experience, oh my God, I was so angry. And at some point I realized I actually hate my enemies. And that was devastating for me. That is destruction of my soul at the highest, at the deepest level. What I learned in trauma healing process is what we are conditioned as a people, we are trying to pack our experiences and emotions in a socially acceptable ways. And in my therapeutic process, I learned actually to really let it out. But I, again, have to stress, in a ways that were safe for me and that they're safe for my family members. So, when you hear about tearing the newspapers or hitting the, oh my goodness, with the fists, the pillow or the mattresses, or some people go and scream in the woods, so that they can, that is all helpful in letting the emotions out, acknowledging emotions. I think it was so helpful for me when I recognized the depth of my anger, the depth of my rage, when I actually realized how painful and how much hurt I was. I actually started to regain control for myself again as I named it and allowed myself to experience it. Of course, I informed my husband of what I'm going through so that he could follow my progress and support it and understand it, of course. But, as you're talking about, we're talking about here cultural components that are so natural to you. which is singing and dancing. And this is yours, belongs to you, and in some way has been taken away from you. So for me, the question is, when are you going to reclaim it back? Because it is part of fiber of each of your beings. And I really can understand, because for us here, for me, when I hear Sevdalinka in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is a particular kind of song, my soul sings, just sings. I don't have to even, and my shoulders start to move, and it's just so innate in me. And then there's this music that is part of my tradition, and I just feel my heart beats. I can imagine that this goes the same for you. So there's something beautiful to reclaim it back, because it belongs to you. It's yours. I know you explain what's happening, but this is really yours.
Thank you, Amela. I think there's another question here, but you may have already answered. We may cover it, but I still wish to kind of ask, rephrase if possible. Again, it's quite similar to what Elfidar asked you before. We have the situation that is going back home, but many of us, just like everyone, might be encountering daily difficulties now, such as in the family, in the workplace, with our kids. What do you have to say about the overlap of interplay of different kinds of trauma? What does that do for someone's mental health and the wellness process when they start to have all of the different things adding up? Something more damaging than the others.
Yeah.
If you can just explain something, because we did touch down a bit of all the way, but still, I think it's something that's quite relevant to our diaspora community. Thank you.
The question really brought me back to, in the middle of the war, there was war trauma. So we were all on the same page in regarding to that, and going through that more or less, and living through that. Then the war stopped. Okay, for us stopped. Let's say for people might have moved to another country, immigrated. But then the existence of everyday life comes in. And for us, after the war finished, the country was completely devastated. To find a job, to get a salary, to send children to the school was impossible. So if, as a new immigrated person or a family, the obstacles are multiple. So even if it's maybe second generation, the daily existence of following the routine, keeping the household, cooking, cleaning, visiting the children, going to the school, managing and helping the parents, while at the same time as a parent helping yourself to go through the work and so forth. So the effects are multiple. And the system of support here is very important. Again, because I come from the Gestalt perspective, for us, the main question when we work with groups and individuals is here and now. The reality of here and now, the focusing on here and now, because that's where my control lies. And what I can do here and now, and what I cannot do here and now. Being aware of one's own capacity and energy to meet demands of everyday life. Hopefully, it's not compounded with another traumatic event. If it is, then it really requires looking at additional systems of support that could actually help me live my life in a healthful way. I mean, and this is so, how would you say it? Theoretical. So if I would have a specific person with a specific situation, then we will walk through that specifically and develop strategies. And one of the strategies might be, it is so stressful for me that stress has worn me out so much that I actually need short medical support so that I can regain balance again, so that I could actually continue to support myself. Might be support actually having months of therapy to help you regain that sense of stability so that person can learn new strategies in life. I'm answering this. I'm not satisfied with the answer, but this is the best I can give without specific situation or specific conversation. And I apologize if I'm not answering completely.
Thank you. Elfidar, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think as you mentioned, Amela, praying is also one of the best way to, really, if you're talking directly to your God, and that helps me to calm down and, as you said, normalize. However, I believe, this is my personal opinion, that it shouldn't be too much normalized, because people should have the drive to do something about it for their people, for our cause. So there is advocacy work you can attend. There are translation jobs you can help. There are something you can help to save lives or decrease the the forces that is coming from back home, I think. And that's what we're trying to do, encourage people to, once they stabilize themselves, to do something that's gonna make them relieve. When you go to protest and scream and yell, you kind of calm down a little bit and relieve some of the stress. And that's why it's good to balance. Well, I think we are kind of end of our time, right? Do you have anything, like one last sentence to share with us?
I really feel honored that I have been part of this webinar. I will be available as a counselor. As you already said, I'm one of those that is there to support actively. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate you being here. First of two of you, Elfidar and Zubayra, thank you for moderation, but also for everybody else who tuned in and everybody else who will be listening afterwards and watching.
Okay, Amela, thank you so much for sharing from your heart. Everything, whether it's personal and professional, it's just fantastic to me to identify what we've been through and how we can overcome. And it was personally, I can say that it's very helpful. As we wrap up today, we want to acknowledge again that these are difficult things to discuss, and we don't want to leave you alone to process them. We want to reiterate that the Uyghur Wellness Initiative offers access to a network of pro bono, confidential counselors who are willing and ready to walk with you on your personal journey in this season. If you feel that you would benefit from this kind of professional support, please visit our website. It's www.uyghurwellnessinitiative, it's all together.com, or email us at Uyghur Wellness Initiative altogether @gmail.com. Thank you again. Elfidar, if you have a few words to say, please close.
I would like to also thank you for your time and all the insights that you shared. We're looking forward to work with you again. Uyghur community really needs every kind of help that they can get. And if you have more ideas and suggestions about other programs that you might like to see taking place in our community, please don't hesitate and reach out to us and let us know. We consider you as a partner and collaborator and a friend in our journey, in this journey. So we want to be here for each other and appreciate your help too. So if you are, if there are services, activities, or topics relating to mental health and wellness that you would like to see, please let us know. And it's not just for you, for the listeners right now or viewers. If you have any suggestions, requests, demands, contact us. Zubayra mentioned the websites and the email addresses already. And we are looking forward to see you all in.
It's frozen. I don't know if you can hear me now. Thank you very much.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. And yes, we'll be in touch. Thank you. And I wish you all the best. I will continue.
Thank you.